All right, welcome back, Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. If you hear that in the background, that was Chad. He's got some high energy after our conversation because he was on fire, folks. I don't know how else to say it. I literally had to fan the screen because he was just going. So, wonderful conversation this morning, Chad. As usual, for those who may have never been with us and are just joining us for the first time on YouTube, the Admin Mastermind is joining every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and it's free for leaders all over this country and in Canada and all over the world. Actually, sometimes we get folks from other countries that join us. Teachbetter.com/mastermind is the link to sign up, and then with that link, you get not only the link for the meetings, but you also get a Facebook link for a community that serves you throughout the week beyond Tuesday. But with that, Chad, man, how was your Thanksgiving break?
It was good, man. I got to spend some time with family, got to eat some good food, so no complaints here. How about you?
Oh, dude, a lot of family time. A lot of family time. But I will say, Chad, that I don't know about you, but I am a creature of habit. And so it's kind of nice to get back to the routine of just
I
life in
agree, man.
general.
I agree. Absolutely.
So with the conversation, obviously we were checking in with folks, seeing how their breaks were, but I think what they're feeling right now is kind of some residual effects of November going into December. I know that there's only a couple weeks, of school before the holiday break. However, some administrators are really looking back at November and some of the power struggles that have occurred last month that are kind of feeding into the new month. And so I think that's probably a good starting point. So, Chad, will you just kind of share out some of the things that, folks have been seeing on the campus that they're working through right now?
Yeah, I think one of the big things was like power struggles between adults and kids, right?
Yeah.
And then the administrator having to intervene in those power struggles. So, one of the things we often preach, when we're doing classroom management work or trauma informed work is like the minute you enter into a power struggle with a kid, you lose. Like there's no winning in that scenario because even when you win the struggle, you lose the relationship. And when you lose the struggle, you really lose because now you're dealing with management issues. And so I think as administrators, if you think about the major complaints teachers have right now, a lot of them are quote unquote, their biggest complaint is student behaviors, and they're more rampant and probably worse than they've been in possibly the history of education. I'll grant everybody all of those truths, right? I think there's a lot of different. I think there's a lot of different pieces to that, and I think there's a lot of causation, but it doesn't change the fact that it kind of is what it is, right? Like it we're here. These are the kids we're teaching, and we have to move forward from going, well, I would teach them, but I can't because of X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? And so a lot of our conversation today was how do we coach the adults so that they can be successful in these new kind of frontiers of student behavior? And one of the first things we talked about is like avoiding power struggles. But the other thing was avoid calling someone else to fix the power struggle because you want to be right. One of the worst things you can do in any situation, as long as there's not, I want to be clear about this, a safety concern or someone's bleeding or like something crazy, yes, call your administrator, make sure that the safety of, I just want to be clear about that. But if it's like Susie gave me a snarky reply or Johnny like said a bad word to me, like whatever like the thing is, right? A lot of times we will take personal offense as the educator, and then we'll go, ooh, you are in trouble, and I'm going to call this other adult to also agree with me that you are in a lot of trouble so I can validate my own response to that. And the minute you enter another adult into the equation, you have prevented the opportunity to repair the relationship in the first place. So a lot of times, and this is something I did in my own classroom, was like I would pull the kid aside and go, hey, and by the way, like here's a strategy like everyone can use, right? Like first start with questions. If I'm a teacher or an administrator that's coaching, or I'm an administrator dealing with a kid, you always start with questions. Statements will stress out the situation. Questions will calm the situation and start the reflective process. But here's another thing, especially with younger kids. And I just read some of this research. There are like evolutionarily predisposed like neurological triggers. When you get loud and tall and point, those are all like aggressive triggering behaviors. And I'm going to let you go off on this in a second because I think like this is like more your wheelhouse even than it is mine. But those are telling the student's brain, they are telling the student's brain that they are under attack, and they are creating the need for a defensive posture for the attack that is coming to them, right? But they did this research and they basically found out that, hey, if you get on the child's level, make yourself smaller, if you speak at a lower tone and a lower level, if you're leading with questions and you have a calm voice, you are telling that child's brain, literally from a physiological perspective, to calm down. Like, so without saying, no matter what you're saying, just doing some of those things is getting the kid into a better spot so that they're actually going to hear the corrective action that you actually have. And I actually, like, after I read this research, I literally tried it with my own kid. So like I'm trying to get them to take a bath, and they were just like not having it, right? And like I struggle with management and kids just like everyone else does, and I was getting into a power struggle with my kid, and I kind of like stopped myself and I go, hold on, I can double down on this, or I can back off and fix it. Those are my two choices: doubling down even in a classroom, calling the adult, raising the alarm, making everything worse, or I can calm the situation and get back to business as usual, right? So all I did was I got down to my son's level. He's like 3 years old. And I calmly and slowly talked to him, leading with questions. And it got him calmed down. He stopped trauma kind of responding and then went to, yeah, okay, I'll get in the bath. Like whatever. But the same thing's true like when we're dealing with students. And I think so many times we miss the opportunity to have those repairing conversations, restorative conversations, because we call someone else in, like our administrator, to quote unquote fix it for you, right?
Oh my goodness, yes. So like everything you're saying is spot on. Yeah, I mean everything is a survival mode at that point, and I think the nonverbal piece of it, we are wired as human beings to survive, and you don't have to teach it. So all of the things that you're talking about, Chad, as far as like, you know, the nonverbals and getting in their space, being taller than them, being very loud, all those things, regardless of if they're being taught nonverbals or not by an adult, they're going to go into survival mode. And then you go on to what was talked about today with our administrators was a book called The Anxious Generation, where they're talking about just, you know, the world that our kids are living in is far different than what we grew up as, right? And you know, they are constantly talked about, don't do this because you're going to get hurt, or you know, there's like a whole fear base around
Yeah.
community and going into different spaces and
Or they've
play, and
never had to fail or struggle
or
or
never
had
had
to
to
be in
fail, right?
danger. Yeah.
But in isolation during COVID, with devices. I mean, there's a whole host of things, right? So now we've got a generation that, you know, just doesn't have certain information based on the fact of their experience, and we're as adults assuming that they have these skills to, you know, work through adverse situations in the classroom, and to read nonverbals and communicate in a proper way and the way that we expect. And then when that doesn't happen, we're disappointed, and then we get angry, we take it personal as the adult, and then we don't model the correct behavior or communication style to the child, and it's
Yeah.
just a cycle, right, that just continues. So it's like,
It's
where is
bad
that
piled
stopping
with
point?
bad, right? Like it's
Yes.
just like we're gonna just make it worse with more bad. Yeah.
So in that sense, like, where does change occur? Well, change occurs where we actually have the power to make it, right? And that is with the adults, not with children. You can't force a child to do something.
Yeah, like student behaviors are always going to be part of instruction. Like, and I feel like sometimes there's like this weird expectation that like we have to sit in our ivory towers as educators, and like we're providing the gift of knowledge, so it should be
Sure.
revered in the highest order, which like I wish that was the case. Like it'd make educating kids a lot easier, but like the truth is it's a hard job, and we're gonna have to deal with some of this stuff, so we can't like, I feel like sometimes we try to separate it out and we need to go, teaching's my job, management's the school's job. And like, if it's not every adult for every kid every day, like you're gonna break that system really, really quick. And that's just not the way to look at it. Now, what I will say is, like when I talk to administrators, when I work with administrators, they know the teachers who are doing, like if you walk into a classroom as an administrator and you know the teacher's taken these 5 steps, how much more receptive are you going to be when that teacher calls you versus the one that calls you every day for that same kid in that same class period because it's just their routine now, right? So like a lot of it's also adult capacity and increasing that capacity. And like, we even suggested today having like a 3 to me principle with the teachers from the administrator and going, listen, I need to assure that you've at least done these 3 things or 4 things or 2 things or whatever before you walkie talkie me if there's no immediate danger to you, the student, or any other student in this school. Like, because it's not a 911 emergency. It's just a kid having a bad moment due to a trauma response or a response to something going on in their life. And that's sorry, but that's part of the gig, right? Like we just have to deal with it. And it can't be, well, I need to teach math, so I can't worry about this, right? Well, that's part of teaching that kid math, is dealing with this so we can overcome it and then get to the math. Now, and so I think a lot of times we get confused, and it gets frustrating, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm like already feeling like the comments right now that are going to come on me for this, but like I want to acknowledge, like I've been there. It's not easy, but like we can't
Yep.
separate those 2 things out. Our job is to teach kids, and if we're administrators, our job is to teach adults that teach kids.
Yep.
And so we need to be cognizant of all of this and make sure it's a team effort, and not like, well, you're going to deal with this as the administrator and I'm going to deal with this as the teacher.
Yep.
That equation never really works out in the favor of anyone from my experience.
Yeah, and you're talking about low level on fractions, and I think that was something that as Miami team
Yeah,
had to do constantly was
absolutely.
like, hey, if this tier here, as the teacher, this is your responsibility, and if you don't have the skills to work through those tier one,
We can work on that.
level, we can do that, right? And so we're constantly teaching our teachers as far as like, if this behavior occurs, what are some strategies you can implement for our kids? But this is not a tier for us to get called on the radio to run into your classroom, right? And then it's level 2. This is where the behaviors are,
Well,
a little
yeah,
more
like
major, that do require administrative help.
even like a kid lying or cheating on an
Yep.
assignment or lying to you in class, right? Like that is not an emergency situation.
Correct.
But there are times when there's like a power struggle now of like, you lied, you did something wrong, I need the punishment to be swift, right? Like I need you to be hurt in some way, shape, or form because you did something wrong. And
Right.
like that's just the wrong way to approach it. The right way to approach it is, hey, that's not right, but we're gonna move on. We're gonna have a conversation in a little bit about what just happened. um, but right now I have a lesson to teach. Like that to me is actually valuing the instruction more than, let's stop everything, call someone else into the room to deal with this problem because that kid needs punished. That's an adult response to a power struggle, not an actual pedagogical, instructional, or trauma informed solution, right? Like,
Yep.
like that's a I want to be right as the adult solution versus I want to keep teaching all my kids because teaching's why we're here, and learning is why we're here. Like, so, like, that needs to be the goal, right? Is to
Mhm.
get back instruction and then handle it. I'm not saying we can ignore these behaviors,
No.
but like, choose the battles, right? Like, if you're going to
Yep.
derail a whole class and call your administrator, like, make it be for the right reasons as opposed to every reason.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely think this is a conversations that going to occur again as we're trying to kind of shift that
And
mindset.
as we get closer to Christmas break, and as
Yes.
like it's that time of year, and
Mhm.
November, December are rough. I get
Yep.
that. But I also feel like November and December, from an administrative lens, provide the opportunity to do one of two things. Like, there's two strategies. There's wait out till January. Like there's like, hey, let's just get through.
Yeah.
Or there's like, keep moving the needle so we can come back even stronger in January. And those are sort
Yeah,
of
for
like the
sure.
development questions I'm having. Like, with a lot of administrators, of like, how do we leverage both of these things, where it's like, let's keep our work and our progress moving and our momentum so that we don't lose it and have to restart in
Mhm.
January, right? So, like,
Yep.
what can we do right now? I think that's an
Yeah.
important conversation, regardless of the initiative or the focus you have for your school or your grade level or whatever it is.
Yep. Start kind of setting up the stepping stones and then potentially doing a hard reset in January. But I think, massaging probably in December right now is
Well,
where
yeah,
families
like
need to have
it's
the
a
conversation.
maintenance program almost,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
like so I think of it as like, you have your big kickoff in August, and then you have your strong push, August, September, October, then November and December come, and if you let everything fall off too much, you spend
Yeah.
all your time in January getting back to where you were in August.
Yep.
Versus, you have to look at it like, we're going to do a high push. It's going to even out. It's going to level off. Let's maintain this level of execution so that we can reinvigorate it or take next steps in our work in
Mhm.
January. Because even if we look at PD schedules, a lot of
Yeah.
schools are scheduling PD for early January, or even February. So it's
Yep.
like, if you have an in service in January, February, do you want to spend that valuable time bringing trainers and people or the team in to redo the work that you did in August, or do you want to take next steps? Like, that's the choice you have. And
Yeah.
so a lot of this is just maintaining that momentum, not necessarily like for like burning people out, but just like, don't let them drop the ball. Like, you can keep it going, and that's okay.
Yeah. Such a good conversation. So if you're feeling that and you need support, obviously you can go over to teachbetter.com. The whole team does work on this in regards to PD for your staff, for your district, in such an important topic. As Chad already said, a lot of folks are feeling this. I know, during our meeting, people were, you know, agreeing with a lot of things that were said. They're seeing it on their campus, seeing it in their district, and they want the support. So if that's you, just let us know. We would love to support you in any way possible. Just a reminder that you can join this group every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time is when we meet. And then really, Chad, it's just asking the group, hey, what can we collaborate with? And this year, we literally not needed to have a topic prior to, because
No,
this group is
we've had
phenomenal.
plenty to go on. Yeah.
We hit the topic and we go running with that. So teachbetter.com/mastermind. Again, that's a free sign up. And with that, you'll get the Facebook link to the group where you can get continuous support throughout the week. Man, it was such a good conversation this morning. It was great to see you, buddy. And
You
yeah,
too,
can't
man.
wait for next